Quantum physics, human behaviour, and the human reset. This is just an introduction to this concept before we go diving deeper. Please subscribe, like, share, continue listening or watching. Now, human behaviour is not fixed. Identity is not fixed. Reality is shaped by perception, attention, observation, choice, pattern, and relationship. And of course, energy. And all of this connects beautifully into what I've created, which is human reset, human integration, and human reconstruction, which is the work that I do with clients. So let's look at the observer effect. In quantum physics, the act of observation affects what is being measured. In my work, this becomes when a person becomes aware of the pattern begins to change. This is exactly what we discover in the human reset. Most people are living unconsciously from childhood conditioning, nervous system protection, emotional memory, inherited beliefs, and of course survival roles. The moment they observe the behaviour without shame, they create space between reaction and response, from patterning and choice, from identity and conditioning. So awareness is the first act of transformation. What remains unconscious runs you. What becomes observed, it can be reset. So now let's look at potentiality. Quantum physics speaks to particles existing in states of possibility before being measured or defined. In my work, this becomes a human is not one fixed version of themselves. They are living potential shaped by belief, their nervous system state, the environment, their emotion, and their identity. And this fits my truest path of life message. Now, you are not broken. You are just unrealized potential waiting to be integrated. So let's look at energy and frequency. Everything at a physical level is made of energy, movement, and vibration. For my work, this does not mean good vibes only. It means the body carries states. Fear has a state. Shame has a state. Grief has a state. Safety has a state. Truth has a state. Power has a state. My work helps people shift from survival frequency into embodied truth. Your body is broadcasting the state it has been trained to survive in. The human integration framework teaches it a new signal. So if we look at entanglement, quantum entanglement shows that particles can remain connected across distance. For my work, I use this as a metaphor. Humans are relational beings. We are shaped by family systems, ancestral patterns, emotional bonds, childhood attachment, trauma imprints, and energetic dynamics. We are not separate from the systems that shaped us. Human reset helps you untangle from what is not yours. And let's look at pattern and probability. Quantum physics deals with probability, not certainty. This links strongly to behaviour. Most people keep repeating the most familiar emotional and behavioural probability. They choose the familiar relationship, their familiar self-abandonment, the familiar shutdown, the familiar overgiving, the familiar chaos, the familiar identity. My work interrupts the old probability field. Your future is not fixed, but your unconscious patterns make it predictable. And let's look at coherence. In physics, coherence means things are in ordered relationship. In my work, coherence is when The body, mind, emotion, and action are all aligned. A person becomes coherent when what they feel matches what they say. What they say matches what they do. What they do matches who they are becoming. Integration is coherence. It is when the human stops fighting themselves. And if we look at the field, quantum field theory suggests particles arise from underlying fields. For my work, the field can be used in a spiritual and somatical sense. Every person lives inside a field of influence. A family field, an emotional field, a belief field, a relationship field, an environmental field, an identity field, a nervous system field. My work changes the inner field so that the outer life can reorganize. Change the inner field and the outer pattern stop having the same power. And let's look at non-linearity. Quantum systems do not always behave in a simple, predictable, linear ways. Healing is the same. People do not transform in a straight line. They have breakthroughs, collapses, integrations, returns, resistance, embodiment, and expansion. Transformation is not linear. It is a collapse of the old identity and the integration of a true one. So let's look at identity collapse. In quantum language, we have function collapses into one state when observed. For my work, the old identity collapses when a person finally sees the truth of who they've been performing as. The people pleaser, the rescuer, the invisible one, the overgiver, the controller, the abandoned child, the strong one, the good girl, the martyr, the survivor. The old self collapses the moment it is seen clearly enough. I am not teaching quantum physics here. I am using quantum principles as a bridge to help explain human transformation. Human reset is the observation point. Human integration is the embodiment. Human reconstruction is the new identity made real. We observe the pattern, we interrupt the survival state, we integrate the lost parts, we reconstruct the identity, we return the human to their truest path. Most people are living inside an old probability field created by childhood conditioning, emotional survival, and unconscious behavior. The human reset brings the patterns into awareness. The human integration brings the body, the mind, the soul back into coherence. And this is where the old identity collapses and the true self just begins to lead. So let's do a deep dive on this. Most people think their life is happening to them. They think their emotions are happening to them. Their reactions are happening to them. Their anxiety is happening to them. Their relationships are happening to them. Their self-sabotage is happening to them. Their lack of confidence is happening to them. Their people-pleasing is happening to them. Their overwhelm is happening to them. But what if none of that is true? What if what you're experiencing today is simply the continuation of a pattern that was established years ago? What if your life isn't being created by who you are? What if it's being created by who you learn to become? This is where quantum physics and human behavior begin to have a fascinating overlap. Now, let me be very clear. I'm not a quantum physicist. I'm not here to tell you that you can think positive thoughts and manifest a Ferrari by Friday. This isn't what this is about. What I'm interested in understanding is how humans work, why they repeat the same patterns, why they continue to create the same results, why they know what to do but don't do it, why they continue to attract the same relationships, why they remain trapped in cycles they desperately want to escape. Because after working with humans for over 30 years, I've discovered something. Most people are not living from consciousness. They are living from conditioning. And most people call that conditioning their personality. The biggest lie humans believe is, this is just who I am. I hear it every day. I'm just an anxious person. I'm just shy. I'm just emotional. I'm just a people pleaser. I'm just bad with money. I'm just not confident. I'm just unlucky in relationships. I'm just not disciplined. But what if none of those things are who you are? What if they are simply adaptations? What if they are survival responses? What if they are protective strategies created by your nervous system years ago? The human reset begins with one simple understanding. You are not your conditioning. You are not your trauma. You are not your coping mechanisms. You are not your emotional reactions. You are not your behaviors. You are the awareness observing them. And the moment you become aware of a pattern, something extraordinary happens. The pattern begins to lose its power. Remember the observer effect? One of the most fascinating concepts in the quantum physics is the observer effect. Again, without turning this into a science lesson, the simple version is this: that observation changes outcomes. Now think about that for a moment. How many of your behaviors operate unconsciously? You don't consciously decide to become defensive. You don't consciously decide to shut down. You don't consciously decide to avoid difficult conversations. You don't consciously decide to self-sabotage. These things happen automatically. Why? Because they have become programs, patterns, neural pathways, habitual responses. They are no longer conscious choices, they are automatic reactions. The human reset is about bringing unconscious programs into conscious awareness, because what remains unconscious controls your life. What becomes conscious becomes a choice, and choice is where freedom begins. Your life is a series of automatic programs. Imagine your brain as a computer. Every experience you've ever had installed is installed software. Every emotional wound, installed software. Every belief, installed software. Every disappointment, installed software. Every criticism, installed software. Every abandonment, installed software. Every success, installed software. Every family rule, installed software. By adulthood, most humans are running thousands of programs they never consciously chose. And here's the problem. The program does not care if it creates happiness. The program only cares if it creates familiarity. The nervous system values familiarity more than freedom. I'll say that again. The nervous system values familiarity more than freedom. That's why people stay in toxic relationships. That's why people stay broke. That's why people stay overwhelmed. That's why people stay exhausted. Because survival does not require happiness. It requires predictability. So let's revisit that probability field here. Quantum physics talks about probability, not certainty, probability. This becomes incredibly powerful when we look at human behavior, because every human has a probability field, not a mystical field, a behavioral field, a pattern field, an identity field, a nervous system field. If I know your beliefs, your childhood experiences, your emotional triggers, your coping mechanisms, your relationship history, your self-image, and your habits, I can predict your future with surprising accuracy. Not because the future is fixed, but because your unconscious patterns make it probable. Most people wake up tomorrow and repeat yesterday. Then they wonder why life isn't changing. The future isn't creating itself. The past is recreating itself again and again and again until awareness interrupts the cycle. And as we look at identity is the real issue. People think they have behavior problems. They don't. They have identity problems. A person doesn't overeat because of food. A person doesn't procrastinate because of laziness. A person doesn't stay small because of confidence. Those behaviors are symptoms. Identity is the cause. Every behavior is serving an identity. Every habit is protecting an identity. Every pattern is reinforcing an identity. The question becomes, who are you being? Who did you become in order to survive? The strong one, the invisible one, the responsible one, the fixer, the rescuer, the achiever, the good girl, the peacemaker, the caretaker, the victim, the rebel, the performer. Because every identity has a cost. And if we look at the collapse of the false self, this is where human integration begins. At some point, the identity can no longer hold itself together. The people pleaser becomes exhausted. The rescuer becomes resentful. The achiever becomes burnout. The caretaker becomes depleted. The strong one breaks. The performer forgets who they are. The false self begins to crack. And this is often the moment people think something has gone wrong. Nothing has gone wrong. Something true is trying to emerge. The old identity is collapsing. And collapse is often the doorway to transformation. So if we look at human integration, we have human reset is awareness. Human integration is the embodiment. Because insights changes nothing if the body remains unchanged. You can understand your trauma, you can understand your patterns, you can understand your conditioning and still remain trapped. Why? Because understanding lives in the mind. Transformation lives in the body. The body remembers everything. The body remembers fear. The body remembers rejection. The body remembers humiliation. The body remembers abandonment. The body remembers not being enough. The body remembers survival. Human integration helps the body finally experience safety, not intellectually, physiologically, somatically, emotionally, energetically. This is where real change occurs. And if we look at coherence again, the ultimate goal is coherence. Coherence is when every part of you begins moving in the same direction. Your thoughts align with your actions. Your actions align with your values. Your values align with your truth. Your truth aligns with your purpose. No internal war. No constant contradiction. No pretending. No performance. No mask. Just alignment. Just congruence. Just coherence. And when humans become coherent, something remarkable happens. They stop leaking energy. Because conflict requires enormous energy. Pretending requires enormous energy. Suppressing requires enormous energy. Performing requires enormous energy. Coherence creates power. So the truest path of life. People ask me all the time, what is my purpose? I don't believe purpose is something you find. I believe purpose is something revealed when conditioning falls away. Your truest path is already there. It has always been there. It's simply buried beneath years of programming. Human reset reveals the programming. Human integration restores your coherence. Human reconstruction creates new identity capable of sustaining the life that emerges. Because the goal isn't healing, the goal isn't self-development, the goal isn't personal growth. The goal is remembrance. Remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Remembering who you are beneath the conditioning. Remembering what your nervous system has spent years protecting you from. Remembering your truth. Remembering your power. Remembering your humanity. And when that happens, you don't become someone new. You return to who you have always been. That is the human reset. That is human integration. That is human reconstruction. And that is the work of returning a human being to their truest path of life. If this is true, what specifically is running a human life? So let's look at the human operating system. So if awareness changes everything, what exactly are we becoming aware of? Because humans don't wake up one morning and decide to destroy their lives. Nobody wakes up and says, today I'd like to sabotage my relationship. Today I'd like to create anxiety. Today I'd like to avoid difficult conversations. Today I'd like to stay stuck. Today I'd like to be confused. Yet humans do these things every single day. Why? Because most humans are not consciously operating their lives. They're operating from an unconscious operating system, and every operating system has 4 major components. The first one is the nervous system. The nervous system is your survival system. Its job is not happiness. Its job is simply just survival. This alone changes everything, because most people think, if I know better, I'll do better. Not necessarily. Your nervous system doesn't care what you know. It cares what feels safe. And safe is often not healthy. Safe is familiar. This is why people repeat toxic relationships. This is why they stay stuck. This is why they fear change. Their nervous system is trying to protect them from the uncertainty. The human reset begins by understanding, am I responding from safety or am I reacting from survival? And then we have the brain's executive functions, which is number 2. If the nervous system is the engine, executive functions, which sit here in the frontal cortex, are the driver. Most people think they have a motivation problem, a discipline problem, a willpower problem. What they often have is an executive function problem. In the reset, you learn about the 8 executive functions, which are the emotional control, the impulse control, the task initiation, your working memory, your planning and prioritization, your organization, your flexibility, and self-monitoring. This could be an understanding of why life feels hard at times. Not because you're broken, because your operating system is just overloaded, or it's not all fully functioning. And then we look at identity, number 3. Who did you become to survive? And this is where my work becomes unique. Most coaches stop at behavior. I go deeper. Identity. The good girl, the people pleaser, the strong one, the rescuer, the achiever, the invisible one, the caretaker, the victim, the rebel, and the performer. The identity was never the problem. The identity was the solution. The problem is you're still using an old solution for a life that no longer exists. And then we look at number 4, which is behavior. Behavior is the final output. Most people try to change behavior, but behavior, it's the symptom. The real sequence is nervous system, identity, thoughts, emotions, behavior, and results. I'll do that again. We have our nervous system, and then we have an identity that's formed from that. And then we have these thoughts that come from the identity, and then we have these emotions that come from the thoughts, and then we have the behavior that's happening because of the emotions, and then we get the result due to the behavior. Most personal development attacks the bottom, just the results. I work from the top at the nervous system. So why humans stay stuck? Humans get trapped in loops, not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, and not because they're broken, but because they cannot see the loop. The human loop is they get a trigger, which is information. Then they have a response to that, which is an emotion. And then they put some meaning into it. And then they have a behavior response. And then they get the result. And then they have this reinforced identity, and then they go back to the trigger. And then they repeat again, 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 again. Human reset is about seeing the loop, because you cannot change what you cannot see. So the human reset framework is step 1 is about awareness. You observe the pattern, you become conscious, you see what is running your life. Step 2, it's the breakthrough. You interrupt the pattern, you challenge the meaning, you question the identity, and you create choice. Step 3 is the integration. You regulate the nervous system, reconnect to the body, recover lost parts of yourself, and you heal the fragmentation. Step 4 is the reconstruction. You create a new self-concept, you create new behaviours, you create new standards, you create a new future. So the return to self, who would you be without the conditioning, without the fear, without the self-doubt, without the need for approval, without that old identity, and without the story? Who would you be? Because I don't believe transformation is becoming someone else. I believe transformation is remembering. Remembering who you were before survival became your personality. Remembering who you were before adaptation became your identity. Remembering who you were before fear became your guide. This is not about fixing humans. This is about returning humans to themselves. This is about resetting humanity. This framework connects everything I've spent 30 years studying: massage, somatics, belly dance, nervous system work, root cause therapy, inner child integration, soul retrieval, identity work, and human behaviour into one cohesive human methodology. And it's here for you. Resetting Humanity. The link is in my bio.